Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Claire Moon, and thanks for coming for this rising sign horoscope. This one today is going to be on the Cancer full moon. That's pretty much already happening. It's going to be perfecting tomorrow on the 6th of January. I'm recording this on the 5th. And it's really interesting because it's also going to be happening across the way from a Mercury Cazimi in Capricorn. So it's a little bit more interesting than a regular full moon, but we're going to get to that. And then after I'm done, so I'm going to start with an intro and then get to some rising sign horoscopes. So you are totally welcome to listen to this for your sun sign. Just know it's not going to be as specific. And if I'm bringing up specific house topics or areas of life, that might not actually apply to you if you're listening for your sun sign. But if you're rising sign, that's why I do that, so that we can discuss house topics. So to get the most out of this, if you want to pull your own chart up so you can see which areas I'm talking about, that's going to be really, really helpful. And without further ado, let me get our zodiac wheel up here. So hopefully you can see that now. So what we have, it's already happening. We've got this full moon brewing. Moon is in Cancer. It's in its own domicile, which is really nice. You know, when a planet is in its home sign, it's basically resourced much better to do what it's supposed to do. So in the case of the moon, it is our subjective sense of feeling, our body, getting our needs met. It's our comfort, our sense of safety, feeling like we can grow and feel nourished, all of those things. And the moon is much more capable of doing that in Cancer. So Cancer new moon, Cancer full moon, like sign me up for pretty much all of them. Another really great thing about this is that, let me change my pen. I'm going to use a different pen today. I'm very excited. What is also so nice about this full moon is it doesn't have to deal with either malefic. Both Mars and Saturn are in what is called an aversion in conjunct. It means that they can't really communicate with the moon, and the moon can't communicate with them very easily. And so in this case, I'm like, yeah, that's fine with me. You know, we're trying to have comfort here. We're trying to have soft blankets and snacks and what we need to grow. And then across the way here, we have our Mercury Cazimi. Mercury is moving into the sun. It's retrograde right now. And, you know, overall, I mean, just as far as like if I could rate a full moon on yay or nay, this one's a yay for me. It's a yay all around. I'm not worried about Mercury being retrograde during it. In fact, the fact that it's a Mercury Cazimi, I almost wonder if, you know, it's a rebirth for Mercury. It's going to be a time of insight. So if we have to deal with the usual Mercury retrograde stuff on either side, you know, I'm willing to take that trade. I've been hearing like some people online be like, I'm scared of this full moon. I'm nervous about this full moon. I don't think we have anything to be nervous about. I'm not nervous at all. I'm curious. I'm very interested. I'm like patiently awaiting my Mercury Cazimi insights and downloads. I shouldn't be expectant. We should try not to have expectations, but like, you know, that's the cool thing about Cazimis, which I will explain what those are in a minute. So I wanted to really nerd out though, and give us some really specific dates here. So maybe I'll just talk about it now. So the full moon happens 5:07 p.m. January 6th, Central Standard Time. So 5:07 in the evening, Central Standard Time. And then right after that, like the very next couple hours, we've got the Mercury Cazimi starting. So a Cazimi is when any visible planet, at least I only count the visible planets, when they're in the heart of the sun. So Cazimi, one of the Greek translations for that is ekikardios, and that means in the heart of the sun. And that by traditional Hellenistic standards, we're looking at within 1 degree. So that planet being within 1 degree of the sun. Medieval standards, they had a narrower window and they used 17 arc minutes. I think there's a little bit of a wobble on that, maybe one more or one less. I can't remember. I use 17 arc minutes. So that business all starts, the traditional Cazimi starts on the 6th at 8:48 p.m. The medieval one starts on the 7th, a little later at 4:12 in the morning, Central Standard Time. This is all, I'm using my own time zone. Then the medieval Cazimi ends 9:51 in the morning on the 7th. and the traditional one ends at 5:14 in the evening on the 7th. So full moon on the 6th, then the Cazimi starts, and it goes all the way until the following evening. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful for people out there who like those specific dates. So what is a Cazimi and why is that important? Usually a full moon in and of itself is illuminating, it's like almost a pun, but it's also like astronomically correct because the moon is the most bright that it is in the whole cycle, right? But a Cazimi is really interesting because usually when a planet is really close to the sun, what we end up having is that planet having kind of a hard time. When you're under the beams of the sun within 15 degrees, especially within 8 degrees, that's combust. That's the fancy word for being within 8 degrees. A lot of the ancient authors said that the planet was less effective. Essentially, they struggled to do what their significations are trying to bring about. So in the case of Mercury, planning, thinking, discerning, judging, those things might be a little wobbly under the beams of the sun. Speaking, listening, communicating, exchanges. Mercury was the one that could go, in the upper world and the lower worlds. So they can travel, they can go in between things. Are we exchanging money, mercantile? Are we exchanging our thoughts and our ideas? Are we exchanging our bodies in space-time through travel? All of these exchanges then become potentially more difficult under the beams of the sun. So it's kind of interesting, or, one of the other ways of looking at it is being hidden. You literally can't see the planet. If you go outside and you look for Mercury, you're not going to find them when they're that close to the sun. So we can also say maybe these significations, they're happening, but just not out loud. Maybe it's within us and it's just this internal process. Maybe it's that we're just not sharing these things. It could be that as well. So then it's quite the shift when that planet, again, in this case, Mercury, ends up in the heart of the sun. And it's kind of like a little loophole where if you imagine being under the hot beams of the sun and you're like sweating and like, frazzled because you're hot and you're thirsty, you're dehydrated, but then all of a sudden you're given like a little sunbrella, you got some shade, and you get like water and sunscreen, right? Like that would be pretty nice. You get a respite, you get a rest from that condition. And they also would talk about it being like getting the ear of the king, getting to talk to the sovereign, getting to talk to the person in charge. And then the sun, being the person in charge here, takes on those significations of that planet and expresses them in a really clear solar way. So one of the more crass ways that I put it is that like the planet's getting the bullshit burnt off of it, basically. So like we're getting like a bullshit-free Mercury here. We're already in a very bullshit-free place of Capricorn where we're ruled by Saturn in Capricorn. It's what is real, what is really in front of us. What are the structures and the systems that exist, and how are we navigating those? And so with Mercury being here, who can have a rational mind, who can be very algorithmic, if this, then that, we're also getting a dose of realism. And so I think that the nature of the insights that we're going to be having with this Capricorn area here are going to be, insights about how to navigate our current situations in the material plane. What space, what time, what money do we actually have? What are we working with here? What, if I'm exchanging my resources with people in order to create something, how is that going to work? How is that going to happen? Mercury is retrograde as well. This is Mercury's inferior conjunction. So it's going to be restarting its whole cycle. This is also going to be a rebirth of Mercury, if we want to look at that. Whoops. Hold up. Wait a minute. There we go. So when Mercury gets to the other side of the sun, it's going to be rising in the morning sky. That's another really cool thing that's going to be happening. So I think whatever insights we get during this Cazimi, whatever we kind of figure out, wherever we land in our planning, in our thinking about things, it's really kind of the start of something new, honestly, which is that's very exciting to me. Nothing to be nervous about, I don't think. But Mercury being retrograde really speaks to the reconsideration, rethinking, refining. It's these rule of re's, reorganizing, reordering, all of these re words, recombobulating. So it could be that like structures that are already in place, people, places, things that are already there, we're trying to figure out how to navigate them in new ways, maybe. So that'll be very interesting. Now, I had already mentioned that the moon is in Cancer, and this is a place that has to do with our needs, how we feel safe, how we feel taken care of, how we feel comfortable. The moon and Cancer, they have this understanding that we are soft, squishy creatures with limits. There are limits of the human body, of the human mind. There's only 24 hours in a day. So how in our insights and all of our ideas and machinations about what we're creating in the material world, how can we make them sustainable? So I'm going to way overuse two words today: sustainability and insights. Insights on sustainability. So that's what we really want to be looking out for on the 6th and into the 7th. And I usually try to recommend during a Mercury Cazimi that we settle down, we try to find some quiet space and time to try to have these good ideas come in. But also it's a full moon, and usually we're a little bit more busy. We're a little bit more active during a full moon. If you're a busy person, if you have jobs, children, and like slowing down is not really that much of an option, just like write stuff down. Like if you get a good idea, write it down. Mercury is retrograde, so I don't know how good we're going to be at remembering things in general. Like I always tell myself, if I get a really good idea, how many times have I said, oh yeah, I'm going to remember that. There's no way I'm going to forget that. I always fucking forget it. So yeah, write it down if you have an insight on that day and you're too busy to like sit with it. Also, full moons in general. I kind of skipped over, what the heck a full moon is. Usually, I think most of the people who watch me are up to speed with that. But this lunar cycle, this is the peak. This is the culmination. This is the pinnacle of this 1 month lunar cycle. We have this once a month. And the brightness of the moon really speaks to an energetic nature of it. It's like, you think about being outside, having the full moon lighting up everything around you. You're able to do more stuff and things because you have the light to do it in. So sometimes it can be external actions being taken. Sometimes we share things that we've been working on, ideas, products, whatever it is. Sometimes it's more of like an internal thing though, where we're just having like a realization. Maybe something has been building this whole 2 weeks before this full moon moment. And then when the full moon happens, it's like this aha moment. And we have a really important realization in and of itself. And then we also have Mercury Cazimi having its realizations on the other end of things. So it just feels like a really good time to come up with some novel solutions, which kind of brings me to the next part of the sky. I had mentioned that we don't have to deal with Mars. We don't have to deal with Saturn because they don't see the moon here. Now I should say Saturn can actually engage with these planets. I know they're in an inversion technically, but because we have Saturn in its own domicile, this is another little loophole where because of that, Saturn can actually help the Sun, Mercury, and Pluto in managing whatever they're managing. He can kind of give them resources or help them to navigate Capricorn. Like they have Saturn's guidance. So it's kind of like more realistic guidance. Very much this analytical. Now in Aquarius, Saturn is very much cost benefit analysis. Is this worth doing? Is this not worth doing? Is this worth taking? Is this not worth taking? Very cost benefit analysis. So, it is very interesting that we have such a subjective, perceptive type of energy. Like, this is how I feel about this, though. I don't care what the reality is. This is how I feel. I don't care what the facts say in Cancer, no offense, because it's my subjective experience. What am I perceiving and what do I believe? Like that's the Cancer experience versus In Capricorn, it is like, yeah, but what are the facts? What do I see? What's the observations? What is objective and rational here? So it's going to be up to us then during this full moon to kind of find the balance between those things. And the other 2 points that are worth considering here, I'm not going to be bringing this into the rising sign horoscopes proper, so I'll leave this up to you all to kind of figure out. But look at the Aries part of your chart and look at the Taurus part of your chart, because that also has a little bit to say. Jupiter is actually in a bit of a T-square situation with the sun and the moon. So with Jupiter in Aries, I mean, this is super enthusiastic. It's very excited about something. It is an opportunity. It wants to grow, expand, do all the things, and it wants to do them right now. It just wants to do them like right now. There's no chill. There's no patience here. And so I think that that's actually adding a bit of tension. It's at a square to both the sun and the moon. And I think we can maybe look at Aries and say, what do I maybe need to pump the brakes on a little bit? What do I need to slow down with? Because it's only adding to the stress of trying to reconcile what we're all constructing and building versus what is possible and sustainable in our mortal limits, basically. And then what could be helpful is Uranus here being in a nice sextile to the moon and a trine to the sun and Mercury. So in the Taurus part of your chart, those house topics that are involved there's a few ways I'm thinking about this. One of the ways is in terms of sudden insights or breakthroughs, sudden changes that create an opening for some kind of solution. Or perhaps now this is a little longer scope, but Uranus has been in there since 2018, really changing the landscape. So what has been changing for a long period of time in the Taurus part of your chart that actually helps reconcile all the things that we're working on or navigating in the real world here and our needs and sustainability in Cancer? It could also be, disruptions or interruptions. That was the final way that I was thinking about it, was that, Uranus can be just disruptive. Sometimes solutions are disruptive though. So, you can decide whether that's something you want to do. It could be an uncomfortable, out of the box kind of solution, brings you out of your comfort zone a little bit. Mercury already in retrograde is kind of entertaining different ideas, different ways of doing things. And then the trine with Uranus that we've been having, a few of these. We're going to have one on the 8th of January. It's actually going to perfect. And then the 28th as well at the end of January. That's the third of the 3 Mercury-Uranus trines. So Mercury-Uranus have been kind of having this flowing, constructive trine back and forth, really bringing in potential solutions that, again, like just maybe not comfortable, but maybe the better way of doing things. So that's that. And then the final thing of the general intro before I get into rising signs is thinking about, what Mercury rules. Because if Mercury themselves is kind of being shifted around and we're thinking about different ways of navigating and using our resources, maybe we have all these materials and assets or skills and talents, and we're trying to figure out how to use them to construct something or build on something. Other things that might be reconsidered, rethought, reorganized, refined could be the Virgo part of your chart and the Gemini part of your chart. So what is going on in those places that could possibly speak to the adjustments that need to be made in Capricorn? It almost feels to me like, there's something that needs to change in Capricorn, partially based on what we know that we need in Cancer to feel nourished, safe, healthy, sustainable. So like the moon is shining light on our needs, it's shining light on, what the limits of mortality are for us. And the adjustments and changes and reorganizing really needs to be happening in the Capricorn area. That's just my 2 cents. So with that, let me just check my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I did. I think I want to talk about the Decans here. Sorry, there is a couple other things. And that's why I really wanted to pick this apart. It's such an interesting one. So with the Decans, and I get this from Austin Coppock, of course, we look at the second decan of Cancer. And this is a decan, depending on if you use the descending Chaldean order or the triplicity ordering of things, it's either Mars or Mercury ruling over this second decan of Cancer. And decans are 10-degree separations. We can actually break each zodiac sign up into 10 different degrees, and it gives us a finer layer of symbolism for that sign of the zodiac. So this middle one, this is actually the Three of Cups in the tarot as well. If you can like imagine those three people with their cups, that they're all like coming together and like sharing, and we can think of water being like this emotion, and we're connecting through that emotive kind of landscape. This place being ruled by Mercury and Mars, what we end up getting is a place where, like, he mentions the walled garden. And that is one of my favorite ways to think about this. It's like we've gotten into Cancer, we've decided what we really want to grow and what we really want to care for, what we want to nourish. It doesn't have to be a person or an animal or a plant. It can be literally anything. If you like want to get really good at building furniture, it could be that skill that you are growing and nurturing. But then once we get into the second decan, it's like we want to have a safely enclosed space. Austin Coppock says process of cultivation and refinement, sealing it off so that I can finish cooking. Boundaries with fecundity, like there's a bunch of fertility. How do we kind of put some boundaries around that to keep it safe? Protective, defensive potential with Mars being involved. And he actually uses a really great analogy of a wolf that's protecting the chicken coop. So what are we growing? What do we want to care for? Look at the Cancer part of your chart to get some clues on those house topics that might help you understand what really needs care, or even where we can find care. Maybe if it's us that needs the nurturing in that area of life, how do we protect ourselves in that space? If it's like, say like Cancer is in your 10th, if you're a Libra, I guess that would be, which I will get to. Like maybe you want to feel protected and safe and nurtured while you're at your job, while you're in your career. So it could be an internal thing. It could be an external thing that we're growing or protecting or nourishing. When it comes to the Capricorn, the second decan of Capricorn, this is the Three of Pentacles, and this is a place that's ruled by Mars and Venus. And so we get this very, very strong drive and ambition, bringing things forward. And what Austin Coppock said here was Mars gives ambition and direction, staying on task, putting resources together to create a place of great and ambitious works. So very much, what are we doing with our time, our space, our money, our energy, anything of the material plane that we can work with, navigate? That's what's happening in Capricorn. And then the final way that I like to consider these two signs and what's going on between them, this comes more from Jason Holley's work on the myth that has to do with all of the signs of the zodiac. He did a series looking at each sign, and he described Cancer as a place where we do have more awareness of our limits, and that we need care and we need protection and we need safety. We have these soft, squishy insides. So we have a crab shell. We've got pincers that will pinch you if you're, maybe threatening me in some way. This is where we take care and we stay safe. We're not going to be taking a lot of risks from Cancer usually. But at the same time, eventually we do need to leave our comfort zone in Cancer and go out into the world and build something and create order and structure for civilization to exist within. And it's not that we don't care about feelings in Capricorn. It's not that we just forsake all parts of being a human or humanity or the softness of humanity so that we can build whatever. I think, one thing that this full moon really speaks to is how do we find a balance between these two things? And that's why I think the word sustainability is so important, because it's not just what we're building, who we're building it with, the materials, the resources that we have, and can we do it? Yes or no? Then the question becomes, okay, if we can do it, how do we do it in a way that actually doesn't leave me depleted? How do I do that in a way that makes sure that we're not forsaking what needs to happen in Cancer while we're doing all the stuff that's happening in Capricorn? So I think that's going to be the balancing act. And again, we know that Jupiter is here just being like, yeah, let's do all the things. I have no patience. And then we might have some really innovative solutions coming from Uranus and Mercury. So I think that's the sky. I think that's the sky of the moment. Nothing to be worried about, much to be inquisitive and curious about, I think, more than anything. So let's start in with a sign. Hold, please. So Aries, sweet little Aries, you, my friends, you are the one that is very excited and enthusiastic about God knows what, maybe a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to talk too much about the outer planets and the other planets that aren't the sun and the moon. I more want to keep these rising sign horoscopes focused on what's going on in Capricorn and Cancer. And then also bringing in a little bit like, what are these other two places and what adjustments might be happening in the Gemini parts of the chart that can add to the adjustments that are happening in Capricorn. So for you, Aries rising, we have the very classic home-work-life balance situation across your 4th and your 10th. So you might be having light shown on your 4th house of home, family, dwelling, your literal house, land, your family, your parent relationships, your private life, and what you need down there, what's growing down there, what needs care and attention down there that maybe has been hard to do because of all of the activity going on in your 10th house. There's been a lot of planets in your 10th house for a while now. And maybe we're looking at making some kind of adjustment in the career, in the life path that's going to allow for more balance and for you to either you getting the care and nourishment that you need in your own home or private life, or those in your home that need your attention and need your care. And then when we think about places that might also be adjusting along with Mercury retrograde here, are the Mercury ruled places. So 3rd house and 6th house. I mean, this is a slam dunk because it's kind of all your just daily lived existence. It's kind of almost asking like, hey, your daily routines, just literally how you're doing a lot of things each day. Maybe change some of it. How you're communicating, maybe that could use a little bit of an adjustment. In the 3rd house, we're learning new things. We have sibling, extended relatives, those relationships, local places, your neighborhoods, local like familiar faces, familiar people, places, things. Something about that might be needing adjustment. So hopefully that makes sense to you. We're also going to be having, again, just as a reminder, Mercury is having its rebirth. So it's a really good opportunity to just hit a reset button on maybe a lot of this normal lifestyle, regular things you're doing to take care of yourself even. The 6th house is your health and wellness. It is how you upkeep and maintain yourself. And it is kind of, I guess, good timing in that it's the new year. Everyone's setting, New Year's resolutions. I personally am not a New Year's resolution-y person. But this does kind of go hand in hand with that a little bit, kind of new year, new you. So maybe something to consider. So for Taurus rising, this is going to be happening across your 3rd and your 9th. And these are kind of complicated places, honestly. There's just a lot going on here. So I'm going to rattle off some house topics and you can think about what this might be for you. It could be so many things. It could be one of these things, more than one of these things, but it's an axis of learning, primary foundational learning in the third, more advanced learning in the ninth, more like university, college, continuing education, literally anything past primary, secondary school. Third house is what is familiar. Ninth house is what is foreign. Third house is short distance travel. Ninth house is long distance travel. So for instance, third house, let's say, you've got sibling relationships, you've got familiar neighborhoods, people that you regularly see, and maybe you find a lot of care and nourishment from those relationships. Maybe they're like super important to you, but you've been doing a lot of long distance travel. That could be a thing. And maybe there needs to be an adjustment in that area for you to be able to care for or find care from your third house people that are more familiar. In terms of belief, the ninth house, that's our larger worldviews, our religious beliefs. It's also astrology and divination, but any kind of larger system of belief that we have. And then in the third house, this is how we embody our belief on the daily, on the weekly, on the monthly. So I like to use the example of like, I light my moon candle on Monday, I light my Mars candle on Tuesday. Those are third house things, my sitting practice. What adjustments might be happening in your belief? Maybe you're rethinking some things that you believe, and you're having to kind of change, or light is being shown on how you're embodying those things. Or maybe there has been some changes and now we're finding a way to incorporate that into our daily regular life. That could be kind of cool. Adjustments in maybe how you are learning advanced things. Maybe you're going out there and just constantly expanding your horizons, but now you're finding that actually what's really comfortable and safe and warm and fuzzy feeling is going back to the roots and the foundations of some body of knowledge. That could be a thing. So let me see if there was anything else with that one. No, I think that was about it. And then Mercury's houses. So the second house and the fifth house. This could go along with part of those adjustments. So second house ruled by Gemini, fifth house ruled by Virgo, maybe with the adjustments being made in the ninth house, or the rethinkings, the reorderings, the refining of that, maybe changes to the way that you're using your money, your resources, your skills and talents in the second house. In the fifth house, things that could also be adjusted during this time might be how you rest, the amount of leisure you're getting, your romantic relationships, casual romance, sexuality, sexual relationships, children, anything to do with child rearing or child relationships in the fifth. So those things, how you are using your resources and how you're managing your fifth house topics, they might play into some of these adjustments as well. So then we have Gemini rising, and this places the full moon happening across your second and your eighth houses. So your resources in the second, other people's resources in the eighth. Second house is money, but it can also be your skills and talents. I also do see the second house more abstractly as your needs. So doubling up on all of those kind of moon Cancer type things of like, how do I get my needs met? And then in the eighth, resources of the other, the partner's resources. And for you and the other, I mean, this could, resources can be beyond money. It can be time, your effort, your emotional labor, your cognitive labor, literally anything that you can exchange for some kind of something. That is across the second and the eighth. So maybe the adjustments, maybe the reconsiderations are happening. Maybe we're changing our mind about other people's resources. Maybe we are seeing that what we thought that they could give, they can't, or that they can give more than I thought. And maybe there's an adjustment happening there with how you're interacting with other people and what they have to offer you. Maybe relationships haven't been that reciprocal, and there's a rebalancing or kind of a readjustment happening so that those relationships are more reciprocal. And in the second house with the moon being in Cancer there, that speaks to like what level of resources do you need? What level of finances make you feel safe and comfortable, make you feel like you can grow and feel protected in that kind of space? So that could be a thing. And then looking at Mercury retrograde and those recalibrations, that might also speak to your first and your fourth house being a bit recalibrated. So first house, honestly, it's you, Gemini, your mind, body, spirit. And that's kind of interesting too, because like if you're a Gemini or a Virgo rising, that means that Mercury is a significator for you in the chart. So it's like there is something really core that could be shifting inside of you, and having an insight about that as well. Like, what are you actually able to give in a way that doesn't leave you feeling depleted or like you have forsaken yourself in some way to meet the needs of the other, which we don't want. And then your fourth house, your home, your family, your private life, how you have a relationship with your family, parent relationships, any of those things, how you manage your home, that could also be reoriented a little bit. Cancer rising. This is about you and the other pretty vividly. Mercury and the sun are going to be in your 7th house of partnerships, romantic partnerships, business partnerships, any kind of partnership. I also do see like one-on-one kind of client interactions. So if you have a client practice of any kind, I do see that in the 7th house sometimes. And that is where the adjustment is being made. And that's where we're having insights. Maybe you're having an insight about how you're operating in partnership, how your relationships are going, how your marriage is going. Maybe some good ideas are coming in about how we can change some things. And part of those changes can hopefully help you as a person to just in general feel more safe, more comfortable, having your needs met, being able to grow in the ways that you want to grow. And how can we make this relationship sustainable so that you and your partner's ideas, standards are being met? And then when we're looking at the places that Mercury rules, being your 12th and your 3rd house, we might have to consider, what's going on up in the old noodle, what's going on in the internal landscape that needs shifting. Maybe it could just be ways that you think about yourself without realizing, the subconscious, the voice that you have for yourself. Maybe there needs to be an adjustment there. Sometimes we're really hard on ourselves, and that can kind of slosh over into our relationships for whatever reason, in whatever way. So making sure that we're being really kind to ourselves, because then that overflows into our relationships. Alone time. Sometimes we just need more alone time. That could be a thing. And then in the 3rd house, we have, a bunch of things: sibling relationships, extended relatives, learning new things, your neighborhoods, your local familiar places, familiar faces, your communication style. So something about how you and the other work in a way that's sustainable. Maybe one of the adjustments that is needed is in how the communication is going. We could also see your daily rituals, going to church on Sunday, going to mass on Saturday, lighting your candles, doing the little things that make each day or each week more meaningful to you. Maybe there's some adjustment there that can be made that can help the situation as well. And then moving on to Leo rising. This is going to put the full moon happening in a very hidden place. So light is being shown on your 12th house of your internal landscape, mental, emotional, spiritual health, having, maybe feeling lonely sometimes in the 12th. It can be honestly just like the foundations of the spiritual stuff. Maybe you're learning about the foundations of the things that you believe. That can be a theme. Behind the scenes work, that can be a thing with the 12th as well, as we're just working away and no one really knows about it. But definitely the psychological stuff, the subconscious, strife, those things. And hidden enemies, honestly, frenemies, if you got anyone you don't get along with, Sometimes that can come up with the 12th as well. In any event, light is being shown upon that place. And we have that in contrast with Mercury and the Sun in Capricorn in the 6th house. So in contrast to the 12th house, where we kind of go away to have some alone time, to have our spiritual insights, to be quiet and with our internal landscapes in the 12th, in the 6th house, it's all of the daily hustle and bustle of our daily lived experience. It is chores, obligations, duties, reporting to our money-making jobs, taking care of your health and your wellness, taking care of other people if that's an obligation, pets, all of those obligatory things in the 6th house. It's pretty hard to sometimes to get away from all of that so that you can have solitude and peace in the 12th. Or if you do have a lot of behind the scenes work that other people aren't realizing you're doing, that might come in conflict with all of your daily small things that you have to be doing all the time. So it could be that, Mercury is helping us to have some insights about what needs to be adjusted or changed in that 6th house of daily chores. And looking at the other places that Mercury rules, perhaps there's something about your resources, your money that also needs to be adjusted so that you can handle the mental health stuff, to give that its due attention as well, or to give your spiritual life or your spiritual health some attention. Also friend groups, your networks of people, your hopes, dreams, aspirations. Maybe there's something that needs to be adjusted there. So again, you can find some kind of sustainable balance between the 12th and the 6th house topics of like physical health, mental health, daily tasks where I'm in the hustle and bustle of things, and my solitude and my peace and my quiet so I can be a spiritual person. All of those things might be going on. So many adjustments may be needed to balance out that area. And then we get Virgo rising. So this is another one where the ruler of the chart is Mercury. So we find that, maybe there's something going on with your identity, with your roles, that something's changing there. And maybe we're going to have some insights about who you even are as a person and what, who you want to be, basically. And this is the full moon happening across the 5th and the 11th. So light is being shined up upon your 11th house of hopes, dreams, aspirations, who you aspire to be, what you aspire to do, as well as your groups of friends, your networks of people, can be colleagues, can be just friends, but groups of them. And maybe the questions are like, how do I feel safe in these places with these people? How can I feel supported by these groups of people? Or it could be that like you are very supported and you feel very safe with these people. And so there's some kind of reconsiderations happening in the 5th house. Now, the 5th house is about creativity, children, casual dating, sex, romance, rest, rejuvenation, pleasure. Lots of fun stuff down in the 5th when it's going well, at least. This is where the adjustments and the insights are happening. Maybe we're having some ideas come in about what needs to change in terms of our creative expression. Maybe the way that we were creating stuff needs to change. Our creative process needs to change in order so that we can actually feel comfortable sharing it with people, or we can feel like we're actually making headway and we're growing what we want to grow. These are our aspirations, our dreams. A lot of times what we're creating, how we're self-expressing, ties directly into the dreams that we're chasing. So, adjustments being made in what we're creating or how we're creating it in order so that we can feel supported, share it with the people who can help us grow. It could also be that adjustments or changes or reconsiderations, reorganizations in child relationships or childcare or anything to do with kids, that could be affecting how we find support in the 11th. Maybe if you are having a challenge with children, maybe we can look to the 11th house. Maybe there are some friend groups or networks of people who can provide support for you in the changing times with Mercury down there in the 5th. And then looking at places that might be other points of adjustment might be the first house of self, mind, body, spirit, and the 10th house of career. Maybe there's something else with your life path, your career, or just the roles you're taking on, your self-concept, that are tying into the changes taking place in your creative works or in the amount of rest that you're getting. You know, maybe there's so much going on in some of these areas that you're not simply getting enough rest. So something needs to change there so that you're able to take care of yourself. So then after Virgo, we get Libra rising, excuse me. And here we're going to see the full moon happen across. Again, we're back now to, we've gone to the opposite side of the zodiac. So we're getting some repeat information about work, home, life balance, except now the adjustments really need to be taking place in the home. We're having insights about what needs to happen in our private life, what needs to happen in our home, our dwelling, maybe with our family, maybe with parent relationships. We're having some aha moments about that. And we're also having light shown upon our career and our life path and what makes us feel like that is sustainable. Or so that when we are pursuing our career, when we're at our job, that we feel safe and comfortable. So if we're having a hard time growing something up in Cancer, it might be that there needs to be some adjustments made down in the 4th house in your home family living situation. It could be that maybe something is blossoming or fruiting when it comes to your career and your life path, and that's asking you to move. You know, maybe you have to actually move your home so that this career stuff can happen in a way that is sustainable. You know, sometimes we have to make those big changes and those big shifts so that we can keep going on a certain path. And then the other places where Mercury rules, where we might also find adjustments needed, maybe behind the scenes work, you know, maybe that's an answer. Getting out of the public eye and doing some behind the scenes work for a moment. It could also be spiritual practices, your spiritual life, and in the 9th house, beliefs, long distance travel, advanced education, advanced learning opportunities in the 9th house. Those could be areas that are also seeing some adjustments made. And Scorpio rising. Here we have the moon shining a bunch of light on your 9th house of beliefs, worldviews, philosophy, advanced education, continuing education, anything past post-secondary, long distance travel. All of those topics might be areas where you're finding a lot of nourishment. Maybe you're growing something there that you're trying to protect right now. And the place that needs adjustment is the 3rd house. Maybe we are finding that there's some gaps in our foundational knowledge, like Mercury retrograde can be like, oh, we were missing that, and that was something that we weren't quite aware of. So it could be that in order to advance and progress, we do have to go back and fill in some gaps in the foundational understanding of things in the 3rd. That could be a possibility. Maybe in order to do the long distance travel that really fills our cup in Cancer, we have to make some adjustments in our 3rd house of local familiar places, neighborhoods, the amount of, honestly, like the 3rd house can be so much about just errands and like all the things we're doing with our local community, maybe things that we're doing with siblings, extended relatives. Some kind of readjustment there is needed, or refinement, in order to balance the 9th and the 3rd. The ability to go out of our comfort zone, but still have one foot in what is familiar. It could also be that 3rd, 9th dynamic of what are your larger systems of belief in the 9th, and how are you embodying them in the 3rd? You know, maybe with the realization, with the moon culminating in the 9th, we're seeing that maybe there's been a change in our belief system. Maybe we're finding that this system of belief or this way of looking at the world is much more nourishing. And then we have to make some adjustments in the 3rd about how we're bringing that into our daily, weekly, monthly life. So that could be a thing. And then looking at the other places where Mercury rules, which also might need some adjustment, might be the 11th house of groups, networks of people that we're involved with, hopes, dreams, aspirations. Those do change from time to time. And the 8th house of what we're exchanging with others, the resources that others have, our partners' resources, what others are able to give and what we are able to give others, that exchange with others in the 8th. That might be another place where we're needing to see some adjustment. With Sagittarius rising, this places us back into these houses of give and take, reciprocity. Are our relationships fair? Are they sustainable in what we are giving out, what we are getting, what people are able to provide us? So we might be having some adjustments in terms of, what are my resources? What does my bank account look like? How am I managing things? You know, it could be that maybe you've managed your money in this way, and now you're finding that that needs to shift a little bit. Maybe the amount of resources coming in has changed for better or for worse. And that really changes what we're able to provide others. And maybe if you are having any challenges in your second house of money, finances, resources, maybe we can find comfort in others. Maybe your partner has resources they can give to help you. And it's just up to you to be able to receive. Sometimes that can be a challenge, you know, especially I think with Capricorn in the second, we feel like we have to earn everything sometimes, like, you know, just simply letting people give you stuff. It can be difficult sometimes with a Capricorn second house, but the moon is up here in Cancer showing us that actually, yeah, there is nurturing and support and care and comfort maybe found in working with others or asking others for support. So that could be what's going on here. And then, you know, it could also be, you know, more abstractly, sometimes I see the second and the 8th be just about values. Like, what do I value versus what other people value? So if there are any changes going on in just the things that you value in general, and then realizing that maybe the values of others seem like they might be more comforting or supportive, that could be some other dynamic as well. And then we're looking at also the Mercury ruled places of the 10th and the 7th. So perhaps there are some changes, new information, adjustments happening with partnership or with your own life path career that are really part of this equation of what's changing in your bank account. And that wouldn't be too crazy. Usually if we have changes in jobs, if our partnership status changes, that can definitely have a very direct impact on our ability to support ourselves, our foundations of resources. And then we have Capricorn rising. So this is very much about you and very much about the other. So this Mercury Cazimi is happening in your first house of mind, body, spirit. So some realizations, some insights about who you are, your self-concept, how you feel about yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you think about yourself. Any of those things you might be adjusting, having realizations about them. And then the moon in Cancer here is showing that maybe there's a partnership that is growing or is nourishing or supportive. And that is something that really needs to be balanced. Maybe, you know, again, with Capricorn, are you able to receive the comfort, support, and nourishment of your partners? Are you able to give to them the support that they need so that they feel safe and supported and nourished? Is this a reciprocal relationship, and is it sustainable? So are their needs being met? Are your partnership needs being met? And maybe that has to do with changes that are happening to you as a person. You know, sometimes we change, our needs change. That's very natural. That is incredibly natural. And I do not think that a lot of, I don't think that people who get into relationships all the time understand how much people change and how much their needs, desires change. So being able to roll with that and continue to have it be sustainable, that's a difficult thing to do, but I believe in you. So There might also be adjustments happening in your 6th house of health, wellness, just how you're feeling in general in your physical body, your daily obligations, the work that you have to do every day in the 6th, and the 9th house of long distance travel, of your beliefs, your worldview, your philosophies, your advanced education. If you're doing any continuing education, some adjustments there might be happening, or some rethinkings. So any of those 9th and 6th house topics that might also be reconsidered might be affecting how these changes are happening inside of you. And as a result, we're needing to find some kind of balance between you and your partnerships. And then we have our second Saturn sign, have good old Aquarius. So for this one, we've got 6th and the 12th coming up. And so this is very much adjustments happening in the internal landscape, maybe with our thought processes, our thought patterns, our spiritual, mental, emotional health, any kind of rethinking, reconsideration of those things, behind the scenes work that we're doing. There might be some reorienting, experimenting going on there. And then in the 6th house, we have our health, our wellness, our daily chores, our tasks, our obligations. And do those feel sustainable? Are we taking care of ourselves? Is there enough time in the day to do all of the 6th house things that we need to do to sustain ourselves, support those who we care for, help us to feel nourished and healthy, like literally? So at the same time as all of the work that's kind of being done behind the scenes, and, keeping space, yes, I need to take care of my physical body, but I also need to do my spiritual life. How do I hold space for both the busyness of each day, but then also having time for solitude, seclusion, and all of that? So that might be more of the balancing act here. And of course, the insights are coming in terms of 12th house things. So this is one that might be a little bit more subtle for Aquarius rising, because it is happening in the hidden place. But sometimes we're well aware of what's going on in there. Maybe I'm just projecting because I have my sun in there, but sometimes we know what is going on in our internal landscape. Sometimes we're well aware of the thought patterns and the habit patterns that kind of color our existence. And those things, we might need an attitude shift. It could be something like that. And, I also we'll look to the 8th and the 5th. Maybe there's a collaboration or an exchange of resources. Maybe there's something changing there that's having an effect on what's being recalibrated in the 12th. Perhaps there is something in the 5th, like rest, rejuvenation, romance, sex, sexuality, creative expression, children. If you have children, your relationship with them, maybe there's something that needs to be adjusted there so that these adjustments can take place in the 12th. One example, I will give an example of myself because I am an Aquarius rising. I'm noticing this already because we're in it, like the moon is in Cancer right now. And what's been coming up for me is that I've actually very happily had a ton of work to do every day. I've been trying to take care of my body. I've been trying to work out and be really consistent with that stuff and cook for myself and be healthy, At the same time, my spiritual practices, my sitting practice, I do a chanting practice every day. I've started that last April. There's some shifts that need to be happening here for it to continue to be sustainable. I've been wanting to do a lot of different things with my spiritual practices, but I haven't been going to bed early enough or getting up early enough to do it all, and then still do my daily work that I need to do every day in a sustainable way. So, either I need to adjust my spiritual practices very much, or I need to recognize that I need like 8 hours of sleep. Like something needs to give there. There's only 24 hours in a day. So that's very much part of what's going on with me, if that gives anybody an idea about what might be going on with them. And then finally, we have Pisces rising. I should just put Pisces rising at the beginning for other ones, just for fun, just because you always have to wait till the end. I feel bad for you. My real name, which everyone can always see up here, by the way, I just need plausible deniability. I don't actually care. I always had to wait. I was always at the back of the line. So I empathize with you. And now I've almost lost my voice, but I'm trying to hold it in there. We're realizing maybe with the moon shining light in our 5th house of rest, rejuvenation, what we do to fill our cup, our self-expression, child relationships, child rearing, romance, sex, sexuality. What do we need there? What needs need to be met? How are we taking care of ourselves in that area? How are we taking care of the children? Are the children getting enough care? Are we self-expressing ourselves in a way that feels nourishing, that feels supportive and comfortable? Is this place comfortable? Versus like what adjustments, changes, reconsiderations are we having in our 11th house of friends, groups, networks? You know, it almost feels like one example could be if you're an artist and the art that makes you feel really comfortable, maybe the audience that you're sharing it with, maybe that needs to be adjusted. Maybe your friends just don't get your art. You know, it could be that we're rethinking like the groups that we're involved with so that I can create and express myself in a way that feels most comfortable. It could be that in order to care for the children in the way they need to be cared for, that maybe some adjustments in your social life are happening, that maybe we're not able to go out with friends as much as we used to. That could be a very real thing. And we're having some realizations about the 11th house groups of people. The 11th house is also our hopes and aspirations. So if there are any changes, reconsiderations happening, experiments happening with what we aspire toward, our goals, that could be what is causing a bit of tension between like, okay, well, how do I follow that dream, but still have enough rest and still take care of myself in a way that feels like I'm working as much as I'm resting as much as I'm working. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. And then as far as the other Mercury ruled places, maybe there are some adjustments happening with partners, with your home life, that's causing some adjustments to be made in the 11th. You know, maybe part of the equation of what insights we're getting, what changes are happening with Mercury in the 11th have to do with partners or have to do with your home life, your private life, your where you live, any of those things. So how can we have our 11th house groups, dreams, hopes, even like your work colleagues, those groups of people, what can we tweak there so that we can take care of our 5th house a little bit better in a way that's more sustainable so that you can get as much out of that 5th house as you need? Okay. We did it. We did all of them. And I think I did it. Did I do it in under an hour? I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out. I think that's all I have to say about everything. I think that's it. If you have any questions, you can put them below in the comments. If you have any experiences, if any of this is hitting and you're like, oh yeah, this is how it's showing up in my life, I would love to hear it. If you're comfortable sharing, put it down in the comments. If this was helpful, hit the like button, subscribe. That is so helpful for me to grow this channel. And if I'm growing this channel, I'm growing my practice. And if I'm growing my practice, I can pay my rent. And if I'm paying my rent, I can keep doing this. So I appreciate all your help. Thank you so much for listening. I hope everybody has a fantastic full moon. I am very excited for it. Who doesn't love a moon in Cancer when Mars and Saturn are in aversion? Who doesn't love that? I know I do. Okay. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.